back to Season 3 of Defence Talk, Securing a Key Advantage, a podcast brought to you by the Council on Geostrategy in partnership with Trade Association ADS Group and sponsored by industry powerhouse BAE Systems. I'm Victoria Starrick-Summerlin, and today I'm joined as always by my co-host, journalist and author Paul Mason.
Victoria, nice to be here. And what we're talking about today is we're moving away from the world of hard power, of geopolitics, of drones, of missile defense, of Iran and Ukraine, although not far away, because what we're going to be talking about is skills, the people needed to make, to maintain, to service, to invent, and to innovate in the defense and dual use space.
That's right. And Paul, this topic is particularly important given that we now live in an age where the training cycles are not necessarily reflective of the speed of the technological developments. And most importantly, of course, two recently published strategically significant documents, including the SDR and also the Defense Industrial Strategy, emphasize the importance of the whole of four skills-based approach, as well as also the Defense Industry Strategy promised £182 million for 5 defense technical excellence colleges. So today we are joined by Rear Admiral Rose, who serves as the Director of People and Training for the Royal Navy, drawing on 30 years of naval service. His extensive operational experience includes overseas deployments in Afghanistan and Bahrain and senior shore appointments.
To my right is Dr. Mary Haigh, the Deputy Global CIO and Director of Digital Delivery at BAE Systems, bringing 17 years of digital and cybersecurity leadership. She's a speaker at events around the world, particularly in the field of secure digital transformation and sovereignty.
And we are also joined by Paul Oxley, and welcome back, Paul, because I believe it's your second time on the podcast, who is now the Director General of ADS Skills, a newly formed department within ADS Group, where he leads efforts to address critical workforce challenges facing the industry. And let's dive in.
Yeah.
Well, Admiral Rose, perhaps we'll start with you. So I have briefly mentioned the Strategic Defense Review and also the Defense Industrial Strategy. Could you please tell us a bit more what exactly both documents say about skills?
Yeah, thanks, Victoria, and thank you for having me on. So I think what's really important about both SDR and the Defense Industrial Strategy is that they place workforce at the centre of the delivery of our future strategy. It's not just something that's a side issue that we can hope sort of follows on the transformation. It's central to it, and I think skills is absolutely central to that, and it's cross sector. I think what the Defence Industrial Strategy gives us is the collaboration across the defence enterprise. So it's not just us doing it in a stovepipe in the military. It's working with industry. It's working internationally as well, but I know we're going to come on to talk about the importance of sovereignty in our skills. For us, for the Royal Navy, skills are absolutely central to that because we know that future warfare is complex, it's technical, and it's very, very high stakes. And if we don't have our skills right to match that, then we won't be best fit on the start line when that comes. I think some of the really important skills, and actually in the podcast that Paul was previously on, you talked a little bit about this. Often we think of technical and cyber and digital, and they are really, really important. I know the Defence Industrial Strategy talks about that a lot. But I think one of the really important things to us is leadership and the ability to work as a team. And that's at small level. For a small formation in the Royal Navy up to task group level, and then sort of on much wider in the defence enterprise. So skills are important because we need decision makers, we need technical minds, we need adapters, people who can change quickly, and we need adopters, people who can get on the front foot with the way technology is going. You'll probably be familiar with the Pan Defence Skills Framework, PDSF, which is an MOD initiative to map everybody we have in defence across all the 3 services and into the civil service, to have a single recognised skills framework which allows us to map those skills and appoint people into roles based on their skills, not just based on maybe how long they've been in the job before or what rank they've reached at a certain stage. So I think, yeah, the SDR and Defence Industrial Strategy give us the kind of strategic direction at the top. It's now about implementing that and moving forward.
And Paul, well, it's your second time on the podcast.
Great to be back.
And I think last time when we hosted you as our guest, we actually covered the skills topic as well, to some degree. But you have recently changed your roles and you are currently the Director General of EDS Skills. So does this reflect the growing significance of the skills issue, this new position within the EDS, which is the biggest trade association for all things defence and security in the country?
Yes, thank you, Victoria. And it's great to be back. And it absolutely does reflect that point. We held a recent survey with our 1,800 members, and we found in those results that 1/3 of our members sees the skill shortages as the largest barrier to growth for their industries. We really are reaching quite a crisis point now, since and the numbers have grown since we last met and spoke about it in the last podcast. You know, it really is going from a skills problem to a skills crisis right now, and we're now coming into a retirement cliff edge within the industry. Over 30% of our workforce are over the age of 55, so we're really at that point within the next 10 years of losing some, remarkable tacit knowledge. Combined with the growth that's being pushed through from the SDR and the Defence Industrial Strategy, and with the hopefully the expected investment into defence from Treasury, we're looking at around the creation of an extra 30 to 50,000 new jobs. That's not confirmed jobs, that's 30 to 50,000 new vacancies. And that's more people that we need to fill. So like I say, we're really coming up to that crisis point of more jobs are being created, looking to be created, but we're really lacking that resource to fill those roles.
And that skills shortage presumably stretches from the pipe fitter to the welder right up to quantum computing and cyber. I mean, Mary, could you just maybe summarise that end of it? The end of it that we've been living with digital technologies for half a century, but we are now at a very accelerated pace, both in quantum and AI. What's that doing to that world where science and engineering meet?
Yeah, it really puts the pressure on being able to very quickly adjust the training that you bring. I mean, when you step back and look at the pace of change, over 20 years, we've gone from no conversation about cyber warfare, no public conversation about cyber attacks, through to now I'll get in a taxi and people will chat to me about cyber security. We saw, attacks on household names impacting the economy. So the skills that we need for that are massively different, and the rate of change is huge. We're quite good at building teams of cyber ninjas, I would say. We've got good at doing that over the last few years. Where we need to focus next is embedding those skills right through into engineering and manufacturing. Right. Because you can't just apply cyber stuff from a distance into the technology platforms that we build. It's got to be embedded within it in order to have the secure by design and the through life cycle piece. And it's not just cyber expertise in the engineering, it's right through leadership. So that when you're talking about the risks that an organisation faces, or a risk of, a program building a big new platform, you're talking about cyber risk in there as well, and really getting that level of consciousness that, users of systems having their awareness of cybersecurity. So really turning up the volume on those digital and cyber skills across the entire workforce, as well as going in hard at discrete skills that we need to build.
And I suppose there's a euphemism problem, isn't there? Because in the corporate world, cyber means cyber defence, cyber security, but in the world of defence, it means cyber warfare. It can mean cyber warfare, both offensive and defensive, and of course the UK retains offensive cyber as a national capability that we want to be able to do. How hard is it to attract people to that particular discipline?
It's partly about how you tell the story of why it matters, and I certainly find in defence actually that cyber people really like the fact that they're coming into an area where we'll see lots of attacks. Right? People don't ignore defence. Their nation-state adversaries are coming at it quite hard, so you get lots of experience, and they like that. And they also like the real sense of purpose that you're protecting something immensely important. You're protecting a way of life, the freedom of society. So we haven't seen an issue in the number of people applying. But if you narrow in on specific skills, it's training those people up fast enough that's the challenge.
So, Paul, you've referred to the skills problem becoming a skills crisis. And I guess, well, it is affecting obviously the services and also the industry as well. What are the practical solutions or ways how you are trying to address this problem? So perhaps we'll start with you, Admiral Rose. What is the strategy?
Yeah, so, well, I think as an employer, the Royal Navy, and this is a generalisation, but people who join the Royal Navy don't join as, we don't take engineers who are already trained and take them in. We take people into the Royal Navy and we train them to be engineers. So I think we have an absolute role across the defence sector to to contribute to the enterprise in upskilling and training our people. I think if we talk about the cyber world, where there's perhaps not less traditional roles, I think they are very attractive. As Mary's already said, they're very attractive to people wanting to join. I think if we can collaborate better on that talent across the sector, then we have an opportunity to train those people, to use them to good effect on the front line. And perhaps we might come to talk about where that front line is, because it's an interesting conversation to have. But then perhaps they go into industry and use those skills, and then we refer to zigzag careers. They zag back into the services. And so for me, rather than talking about a war on talent, we hear about this. It's competition, it's competitive, it's a war on talent. It should be a collaboration, because it's an enterprise effort in the defence sector.
Mm-hmm. Would you agree?
Totally. I think it's particularly on big companies like BAE Systems to build a talent pool. I don't want to be in a position where I'm competing with government or the rest of industry on sort of stealing people. It's not a particularly healthy way to do it. Building the talent pool is what matters. And a big part of that, of course, it's about having the training available, and our digital academy took 8,000 people through that this year. But it's also about the cleverer ways that you widen the door to bring people in. Mm-hmm. So, if I think about the team that I had when I was in the CISO role, only one person within that team actually had a cyber degree. There were people with geography degrees, there were people with biology degrees. I've got a physics degree. There was someone that was an ex-West End dancer. There was someone that came from healthcare and understood how to be resilient in a crisis situation, sourcing PPE through COVID, take that into a cyber incident. So it's how you open the door wider to bring in the career changes. And organisations like Caps Lock do a brilliant job of attracting in an immensely diverse set of people from all sorts of different backgrounds, socially, kind of the types of jobs they've had, neurodiverse, gender mix, brilliant.
So ADS's members tend to be on the prime or big side of the industry. You have a supply chain of SMEs, and therefore you're dealing not just with your own skills needs, you're dealing with bottlenecks, shortages, where the SMEs distributed around the country. I'm wondering if you can give us a kind of bird's eye view of where the bottlenecks are right now. I mean, I did a study last year with Mate UK with some of the SMEs, and it was surprising how many CEOs and MDs of little companies all said the same thing: people who can't work a printed circuit board. We just need people who can understand a printed circuit board and work with it. Am I right, or are there other kind of nuggets of detail?
No, you are absolutely right, Paul. I mean, within ADS, within our 1,800 members, around 92% of them are SMEs. So we represent the whole of supply chain. And the thing I hear over and over again from our SMEs with regards to their skills problems, the primes don't have so much a problem with recruitment at an apprentice level, more around their recruitment issues or around the more advanced stages of skill sets. The SME supply chain do have that issue around attraction. We have SMEs spread across all over the country. Many of them are excellent, well-paid jobs, but they're outside of the more traditional defence clustered areas. Like I say, they're spread out across the whole of the country. So their issue is around local attraction, where the perception may be that to get a good job in defence, you have to move to one of the major cluster city areas. People move over, but it's also that access to good quality local training. And combined with the restrictions that we see within the administrative burdens and the policy restrictions that they face with regards to the apprenticeship level networks, now the growth and skills levy, being able to attract people, being able to find and source good quality local training, everything just seems to be up against them right now.
The global situation, well, it's certainly, the security outlook is not getting any better and doesn't look like it will get any better anytime soon. Now, thinking about, well, the past couple of years, has any one of you noticed, well, growing interest from younger people, or even, well, maybe people who are in their mid-careers or even late careers in different sectors, becoming more interested in contributing to the country's defense and joining perhaps, well, BE Systems or other businesses, or also, well, the services as well?
I think, awful as the Ukraine conflict has been, it has had the effect of bringing really up close and personal to everybody the importance of security and kind of maintaining our way of life and the role that defence plays in that. Ukraine brought it very close to us, and so the understanding of the importance of the defence sector is into students. And when we sponsor the Cyber Leaders Challenge, bringing leadership skills into cyber and that awareness of the broad skills that are needed in there, it's really heartening speaking to the students. They really get the mission and the purpose and are super excited about trying to find a role in that sector.
There's another big global thing happening that coincides with Iran, Ukraine, and the rest. Of course, it's the agentic revolution in artificial intelligence. And I think this is going to be on the minds of, it's certainly on the minds of all the 20-plus-year-olds I know in my life. And what they're all wondering is whether or not they, as junior professionals, whether they're lawyers or junior engineers, are going to get automated out of existence. So there's one place where you can be sure that the automation is happening, but it's happening quite slow, and that is in the traditional defence industry. So I'm wondering how this is playing. How is it? Are you using AI in your own operations? Is it affecting the way people think about career paths?
And from I go all over the country on site to visiting all of our members, and I've seen some great outputs that support the skills issues through automation and AI. A great example, I went up to a shipbuilder up in Scotland. Now we all, one of the biggest shortages we have is in welding. But this business has taken on automated welding machinery. Now you might think that's going to replace jobs, and actually it has not done that. It is the average retirement age of a welder, because of it is backbreaking work, is around your early 50s. Actually, through the use of training the staff to use automated welding, it means that it's pushed retirement age back up to the 65, 67 level. Right. So it's actually helped support the skills overload. I mean, AI and other automated technologies, it's there to enhance the role, not replace it. So we absolutely, in terms of how we train the next generation of workforce, we need to be using this technology as early as possible to get people prepared for using it. And like I say, it's not there to replace a job. It's there to make your job easier, to recognize mistakes and enhance the role.
But the speed of developments when it comes to all things AI is just incredible. How do you future-proof whatever kind of training schemes you've got in place? What's the solution?
I think it's partly about the culture you build in and the mechanisms you build in. So if you have a culture of, I just spent ages developing that thing and I'm going to leave it be for a while because that was hard work, that's a real friction against change. However, if you have a culture of almost that bring out the inner geek, I'm super excited about the developments that are happening, and I have, through, to be honest, structured governance and every month, every quarter, you have a session where you go, what's new? How does that play through into the training we've got? That's quite a different way of thinking. that, you know, a lot, particularly in the digital training, it's about experiential kind of labs where you try things out. They're quite well built. You can adjust the scenarios that you play through pretty well. So with digital technology, you can adjust things fairly fast as you work through, and it's driving in that culture of excitement about learning a new thing as opposed to fear of learning a new thing. And if I can just pull on that AI bit again, particularly in the world of defence, you know, integrity, transparency, good judgment, understanding the impact of your decisions is massive, and humans bring that.
Yeah, I think there's a view that you know, perhaps uncrewed systems, you know, drones and all that, you know, sort of changes our workforce fundamentally, and I'll come back to why there is a bit of that. But I think where it doesn't change is that we need leaders, we need decision makers, we need teams. All of what we do is done as a team. And I think we need those leaders who can deliver, but those leaders who can take teams with them and you know, generate a high performing team. When you meld those two sort of attributes together, that's the magic. So we know from some surveys, and they're not our surveys, these are industry sort of wide surveys, that that people favour service over pay and conditions. And pay and conditions really important, but the service is, you know, is something that's inherent in people, and they want to be able to serve. And so I think you know, I think the global strategic situation that, you know, that we're in, where it's uncertain and all that, does put that into focus.
I think, you know, you can do all the training you like, but unless you've got the great leaders who can talk powerfully to the mission and can create the right culture, people don't stay in the team.
Yeah.
And one thing that's true of the young workforce now in particular is they feel very mobile. If they don't like the culture of an organisation, they will make a decision to move really, really fast. So more than anything, having the right leadership in place to drive in the right cultures, the really inclusive culture, where you tie, doesn't matter what you're doing day to day, you tie it to the big purpose. That's increasingly important.
We're going to move on now to talk about early careers. And UK aerospace, defence, security and space sectors employ 26,200 precisely, I've got the figure here, apprentices, according to ADS. Yeah. And there are some stellar, you know, individual examples of that. I think it's a matter of pride in Merseyside that it's harder to get into the engineering college at Camel Laird than it is to get into Cambridge. There are more applicants per place. So there's some really good things happening, but what needs to happen better? We've got all the initiatives, the 5 Defence Technical Excellence Colleges, the Universities Defence Alliance. We've got a wider government initiative around 19 Technical Excellence Colleges. What's the anecdotal about how this is working and how it needs to spin up a bit better?
The government has announced the 5 Defence Technical Excellence Colleges, so they're in Plymouth, Yeovil, Blackpool, Rotherham and Lincoln. Now, we're very supportive of the Defence Technical Excellence Colleges, but the problem is that's just 5, spread across very distinct parts of the UK. And there's quite a large, you know, void between Yeovil to Blackpool to Lincoln and Rotherham. That's quite a big patch of the UK that doesn't have direct coverage. So the government is looking, and I'm working in partnership with the MOD on how we develop the DTEC program to a hub and spoke model. So we've got the 5 hubs and how that develops into a spoke network to support all the FEs across the country. And it's absolutely vital that every FE has an opportunity to work with the defence industry. I think the key part to cracking that is they must work in partnership with industry. Industry must have a say in feeding into their local colleges what their local skills needs are. There's no point in having a DTEC that specialises in one skill set, and those courses are only available up at one of those DTECs because, like I say, the restrictions of the levy, employers cannot pay to send their apprentices to those centres under the levy. They cannot pay for travel, sustenance and accommodation. So they must have good quality access to in their local area. So it's pivotal that industry comes in, works with local FEs and designs those curriculums for them.
I believe earlier this week the applications also opened to join the Defence University Alliance, and initially there will be 20 founding members, and the universities now are able to apply. But I guess the question is, well, if we look at the situation right now, how do you all interact with that university and academic ecosystem, including universities, colleges, any other educational institutions?
I mean, we've got deep partnerships with, I think it's 6 universities. So, for example, we work closely with Birmingham on quantum computing, but then we've also got, and that's kind of pulling the expertise, right, to have that research collaboration. But you do, as a result of that, get your students feeding through into the workplace. We've also got partnerships with 20 other universities. So, as an example, in the Barrow Apprentices Training Centre, that works closely with Cumbria University. So it's creating the partnerships and the scale. And one of the things that we're looking at is, we're a prime, we've got the luxury of those apprenticeship centres and lots of people applying. How can we spin that out into the wider ecosystem? So can some of the SMEs have apprentices at our colleges? Can we take some of those applications that were unsuccessful to BAE but spread them around the SME? So I think it's partly around leveraging the scale that's already there in all the different areas.
I was just going to reflect on the bottleneck thing, because I think that Paul asked, because I think one of the bottlenecks is the ability to kind of accelerate all of the things of whether it's recruitment, training or retention. I know there's some really, really exciting things that certain universities are doing about compressing courses, course lengths, keeping them shorter. I think we want to learn from that experience, maybe not at the sort of graduate level for us, but where is the best practice in compressing training, shortening it, not to we've got to maintain the goodness of what that training is delivering, but I think there's an awful lot we can do in accelerating all of those bottlenecks.
Like I say, we're very supportive of the DTECs. There's the Defence Universities Alliance. That's all great work to help bring in the right training provision, but we do need to target the future workforce at a far younger age. We need to be making STEM far more engaging for young people, like I say, at that early age, to develop their interest in STEM learning. It's no good just teaching maths by answering questions 1 to 10 on a board. We need to actually put it into practical application and how it can be excitingly applied. I'm a huge supporter of STEM learning, STEM activities. I'm a huge avid Lego fanatic, and it's that kind of gamification and learning that helps us to bring our industries into the hearts of young people in that future workforce. There's some great organisations out there like Primary Engineer who are all about going into schools and gamifying STEM learning, but we need to make sure that the curriculum has that flexibility to allow it. Schools are at breaking point when it comes to the curriculum. Teachers don't have a lot of resources, but there needs to be that flexibility from the Department for Education to allow organisations like our industries and these great STEM charities like Primary Engineer to come in to help engage with younger people.
How active is the interaction between, for example, your trade association and any educational institutions or stakeholders?
So we have a lot of university members. We have a great college. We also engage with a great college network at the FE level. At primary school level, it's very hard. That's why we engage with organisations like Primary Engineer. As ADS, we run also the UK Rocketry competition, which is open to all secondary schools across the country. We are seeing a great level of uptake on UK Rock year on year. So that's fantastic from a secondary school point. But like I say, it is, from year 9, it's around year 9, so around 13 to 14 onwards, most young people have already got an idea. They've already got to choose their GCSE subjects at that point. We need to make sure that we're engaging with them before that so they can make an informed decision as to where they want to work.
I think there's a bit on cadets as well, and I know when you last did the podcast, Paul, I think there was a BAE apprentice on the podcast who attributed her discovering the defence sector as having been an air cadet. I think the cadets organisations are for the defence enterprise as a whole. I'm not saying that cadets is a route necessarily into the military, albeit we really support them. But it's definitely a way that I think they they see the broader defence sector and map it out of as a route. And actually, I think it was Tilly. I remembered her name now. I think Tilly, who was on that podcast, specifically kept going back to I was an air cadet.
The trick is giving them a flavour of what it means to be in that field, which something like the cadets does do. And I think spending the time with schools working out how to engage the teachers and what works for them. We've got a really long running, it's been running 21 years, STEM Schools Roadshow that we do with the RAF and the Royal Navy. And that's reached out to a lot of pupils, 1.4 million over that time. But it's really making sure it shapes and sits alongside the curriculum and demonstrates what it's really like to work in a field using those topics and bringing it alive for them. I was chatting to a friend the other day. She'd been to parents' evening, her daughter's choosing GCSEs, so they were going in to meet the teachers. And the computer science teacher said to the daughter, despite the fact that her daughter got good marks in it, said, I don't think computer science is for you because you need to be the kind of person that spends the weekend writing code. And I thought about it afterwards. You don't say that about geography, you don't say that about history, you don't say that about maths. Why on earth would you say that? I don't spend my weekends writing code. There's an odd view of what it means to be passionate about tech. And we kind of need to shift up that understanding right down into primary schools and secondary schools.
And of course, as you tell the story, you're facing another story, aren't you? You as a corporation, you as a service, we as a defence community, which is defence is bad. There is a pushback. What works in overcoming some of that resistance?
I think it's education. I mean, we all saw last year an issue with some universities banning defence companies coming to their careers fairs because of the fear of protester action. Actually, just at the start of this year, we at ADS discovered that the Times Good University Guide actually had a people and planet category that actually awarded points to universities that disassociated themselves from the defence industry. Now, thankfully, through engagement with the Times, they've agreed to actually rescind that category, which is really a really good step. But it is a point about education and the impact that defence has on everyone's everyday life. I mean, just looking at now the crisis over in Iran and the impact that has had on our fuel prices, our food prices. A good, strong national defence base is not a nice to have. It's actually vital to our way of life and our everything that impacts our general day to day. So I think like go back to the question point, is all about educating people about the need to support a strong UK defence base.
I think it's sorry, Mary.
No, good.
I think it's also about connecting with society, and it's something we talk about a lot. The Navy, from a Navy perspective, we're quite well connected in the baseport areas, Portsmouth, Plymouth, Faslane, and other sort of pockets where there's air stations and Royal Marine units. But more broadly, connecting with society and connecting with society in a really positive way. I think the Navy is often seen as sort of over the horizon, but connecting with society to ensure the nation understands that the Navy doesn't exist for the Navy. The Navy exists for national security. The Navy's job is to protect the nation and keep the country safe. It's their Navy.
Yeah. I mean, we do work with the veterans. We do work with the Poppy Appeal. We do work with Bletchley Park deliberately because people know those stories and they're remembering that our modern day organisations are delivering what we did in the past with those. I do think there's also a piece about good governance, good culture, good leadership, and the thing that makes the difference is good governance and good moral code and good integrity through all our staff all the time. It would be incredibly damaging to have a story where it showed that hadn't played through. So being absolutely on our game of behaving well and being the good citizens is incredibly important.
We're going to move on to retraining, upskilling, switching careers and the rest of it, because we're not dealing with a static situation. We're dealing with a situation where defence demand is going to rise when we do get the defence investment plan, and we're getting a situation where the SDR itself wants the mobilisation of more people in more dual use technology. So we're going to need people to come back or to come from other careers. What's the experience of specifically of switching and zigzag careers?
We talk about squiggly careers, zigzag careers quite a lot.
Squiggly careers.
Squiggly careers.
That's great.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah. Personally, a classical squiggle career. I didn't start in cyber. I started in semiconductors.
Right.
Moved into intellectual property, moved across into cyber, and then worked my way through. So it's hugely beneficial because it brings the different ways of thinking, and it's on us when we write job descriptions to be really careful not to write, the list of 100 different qualifications you have to really think about what actual skills do I need for that role and not create unnecessary barriers.
Well, I was going to say, I think this is where skills and a sort of understanding of skills across the sector is so important. I think some historical examples of people who've left the service and come back in is that they tend to come back in at the level they left the service, and because we've been unable to recognise what it is they've done out in industry, and recognise those skills to bring them in at a sort of level that's more commensurate with the skills that they've learnt outside. It comes back to that point about collaboration. If we're working together on this and we really understand what skills mean, then I think that enables you to do that zigzag career and not come in at a lower level, but to zag back in, because at an appropriate level for the grade and the skill that you've achieved. I think that goes some way to overcoming sort of pay disparity and things like that there are around. But it's something we're looking at. I think we're quite excited about it. It's about getting it to happen. And there are some good examples already of just but their pockets. It needs to be scaled up a bit.
I'm just wondering specifically for the maritime domain. General Squiggly said we want a hybrid navy by, I can't remember what year, but soon. How's the move to a hybrid, i.e. more uncrewed systems, more autonomous system? How's that changing the kind of people you need and the kind of people who might come back in?
And I sort of answered this a little bit earlier, but I think what doesn't change about them is the leadership thing.
Yeah.
I think because technology is moving at such a pace, I suppose for us to try and keep up with it alone, is probably a fool's errand. We in maybe sort of ship marine engineering. We may be able to start here and move on a path of upskilling our people to a level of competence, expert, professional. All of those, I'll have got those wrong, but the levels of skill proficiency. I think some in the way technology is moving at such pace, it's more about maybe bringing those skills in because they've been learned elsewhere, or or someone else has been able to move that individual, quicker for, more speedy. I think one of the interesting things, I say about if our equipment, human-machine interface is really important. How people interact with the technology and the equipment that they operate. They're not a game controller that they recognise or a phone that they recognise because none of us have been taught that. But we can all use it. Then that's a way that we need to change to adapt to the people. I think, rather than a little bit less than the changing the people to adapt to us. So I think that's something that we really want to be able to take forward.
What are some interesting practical examples of bringing people from some unusual careers or entirely different sectors into, defense industry or also the Navy? A couple of practical examples would be really interesting.
We've had some really good success of bringing people into BAE from perhaps some unusual places is through the Movement to Work programme. So that takes people who are not have fallen out of education, fallen out of work, and gives them opportunities to pull them into organisations. So we've done over 1,000 placements. We've got 343 young people securing permanent roles with us. And just to give you an example, there's a young man called Brandon who works in our data team. Super important area. Can't do AA without sorting out your data. So massive growth area. He's just won the King's Trust Rising Star Award, and he's come from a really, difficult situation into BAE, into a fantastic team in the data team, and seeing him really flourish. And that kind of story is, I just love that, because it's a win for him and it's a win for us. And as you tell those sort of stories, that's how you give confidence to people that they can come into a space that they thought perhaps wasn't for them.
Well, basically, you need to find people who are keen to do the job well, who are hardworking, and who just, are committed to what they do.
I draw out with the team, actually, a kind of Maserati of needs. And at the bottom is the moral code, the behaviours, culture. Are you a collaborative person? Do you listen? Do you have integrity? Are you curious? If those things are in place, then we can give the training on top of that. But if they're not in place, it doesn't work in the team. So it's been clear that, yes, skills are massively important, but actually the skills in terms of the behaviours are the most important, because from that you leverage everything else.
Well, let's try to summarize perhaps our conversation today. And Rear Admiral Rose, of course, the Navy is moving towards warfighting ready Navy by 2029. And in your role, which you have just recently started, what are the key priorities for the next couple of years for you?
So training is one of them. Modernizing training, getting after quicker courses, compressed courses, as we've spoken about previously. I think, and I'll list three. I think that's number one. I think the second one is related to Paul's question about identifying the changes that we need to make to bring people into the service who perhaps have had a different experience of life to the point at which they join the Navy than previously, and that's around sort of tech and exposure to tech and AI and all those things. So adapt the workforce and adapt the service to make that work and turbocharge it. And then the third thing is culture and leadership. And Mary's made that point throughout, and I completely echo it. If we don't get the culture and the leadership right as the bedrock of everything we do, then I don't think we'll be able to move at the pace we need to. We can try and change our training courses as much as we like. If we haven't got the leaders that are embedding the right culture in our service, then we're on a hiding to nothing.
And Paul and Mary, what does success look like to you in your roles and in your organizations when it comes to people and skills?
For us, it's essentially how we can open the doors and provide greater social mobility and accessibility to our sectors. We've got to work with all parts of the region, with all regions within the UK. We need to also create that triangle of partnership, as I call it, with industry, academia, and government, to make sure we're all working together, because we all have the same objective. We all want to see our defence industry grow. It's needed to create UK resilience. It's needed to grow the UK economy, and to create good, high-paying jobs. We need to identify what our local regional needs are, what the local workforce and educational training needs are, and work together to provide that provision.
For me, it's about creating the clarity for all of our teams on how they can develop their career and the skills that they can quickly and easily get access to in order to develop their career. What the structure of that also gives us is the ability to move talent around, and that starts to get you into a space where if there are certain skills which we need less of and other skills that we need more of, we're much more fluid about how we pull those people through into new areas and train them up. So really getting that mobility of talent going at a global scale across the organisation. And if you're doing it at a global scale, that means you need the structures in place around job families. And when you start to do that, you can also start to really develop the collaborations right across industry, government and academia of how you describe what a role does and how you move talent, not just globally within one organisation, but across multiple organisations. And then together we're succeeding then.
Paul, it's been a pleasure to cover this topic with you and with our three wonderful guests.
And there's such a huge challenge ahead because, for the obvious geopolitical reasons, this is a growth industry. And I think that's the message we want to give to anybody watching this who's in the industry and thinking of entering it, worried about it. It's here and it's growing.
Absolutely. And well, thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you so much to our listeners also for continuing to listen to our podcast. And we are very much looking forward to delivering more episodes for you in the upcoming weeks and months together with Paul in season 3.
Goodbye.